All right, that's our sign. Recording in progress. So everybody will grab a seat. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming out this evening. It's good to see everybody on, I know it's September, but it doesn't feel like it outside. So we'll be thankful for the nice weather to continue. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And before we get started on the agenda, I would like to recognize Will Snyder. He has a special presentation for the board, if you would.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Qualls. Make sure my mic is working. So we have a very exciting announcement tonight. We had previously announced that we were awarded a little over $3 million in federal funding from the Safe Streets for All program. We are very excited to share that just last week, about a week ago, we officially executed that agreement with FHWA. So the money is essentially ours. And we have a couple exciting announcements on that front. So first and foremost, this is really a huge investment from our state and federal partners in safety for our region. We know that there's a pretty recent set of data that just came out from NCDOT sharing that about 21,318 crashes occurred with injuries in our planning area last year. And of that, about 205 were fatal. So we are, of course, very aware that this is a serious problem in our planning area, and we're really eager for the state and federal investment that's going to support a regional safety action plan over the next 12 to 16 months. And so our comprehensive safety action plan will bring along all 24 of our member jurisdictions to develop not only a regional blueprint, but really advance a lot of work locally as well. So you'll be able to have the framework to address a lot of the transportation safety challenges that occur in your community, so that as a region, we can really move the needle on getting to zero injuries, zero deaths on our transportation network. And so I want to especially thank your communities for your involvement. A lot of your staffs were very involved with us leading up to this announcement with scoping our plan. We are finalizing an agreement with a consultant to support us with this project. And so we're really excited to just keep moving this thing along. And with that, I would like to invite Lisa and Brad to the front of the room to join in a little celebratory announcement. But thank you all again for your support. Of course, this board endorsed a application to this federal program over a year ago. And so we've made great progress towards that in that time. But yeah, so with that, we're going to present some checks here. So this is our federal grant award for $3.15 million. And then we have our NCDOT match that was also provided to help offset the match of this federal grant. And so we would like to invite up the board. Do you want to share a few things first? Yeah.
Congratulations to the staff. I mean, this was well deserved and well earned. As we all know, with grants applications in our communities, it is not easy. And all of this grant application was done in-house. So that's such a huge savings, and just, we're excited to be as a leader in our region for transportation, that we want to do everything possible to avoid those crashes. When we were at the Transportation Summit, one of the speakers shared with us that there's about 43,000 fatalities a year, transportation-wise, and 43% of those fatalities are actually the person is alive at the time of the accident. And if they're reached within 30 minutes with the first responders, they have, it's astronomical amount of possibility for their survival. So transportation, not only for, what we look for cars and safety, but be able to get our first responders to an event within 30 minutes cuts down the fatality in half. So that's huge for that. So well done to the staff. We do want to invite all of the board members, all of you that are sitting there looking at us with these big checks, come so we can get a big picture with the big check. So come on front.
Thank you, Lisa.
Wherever you want us. Want us in the- Round.
You ever go to that? No. It's a nationwide.
Do one.
That's the end.
The board and then us.
Thank
you.
I think, yeah.
All right.
I never.
Ed.
No, I'm good. No, you're good. You and me in the back.
Red rubber, red rubber.
Almost here. The only important guys got here, so we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all have.
So we're gonna get. You gotta get on the staff. Yeah, let's do a quick vote on the staff. Yes, all the staff. Big deal, it is a big deal. What else we got?
Here we go. All right. Now, say money.
There.
Great way to check that. It's right there. One of you guys needs to come up a little bit. All right, guys. All right. It goes like one big check. There we go. Awesome. Thank you.
Well done. Big checks for a big birthday for our organization. Everybody didn't get to see the cupcakes in the back. We're 60 years old. So happy birthday, CRTPO, right? Our MPO. Okay, thanks for everybody allowing us to do that. We're going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Got a motion, got a second? First and a second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on to our public comment period. We do have one person signed up to give public comment. Mr. Carson Cohn, good to see you again. Come on up. We'll have 3 minutes. We appreciate you being here, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi. What would it take? What would it take for a required number of vouchers to be necessary of any vendor who would accept a contract for the I-77 South Express Lanes development? I completed a public records request, which stated that vendors must have, and I quote, a number of free or discounted trips on the express lanes per month/year, unquote. This literally translated means that there could be 0 vouchers and a minimum number of discounted trips per year for low-income people. And though a requirement has been set for a $1 million per year financial impact, this could mean almost nothing for the average person on food stamps trying to drive on the express lanes. That is because in Mecklenburg County alone, for the last year reported by a Federal Reserve Bank, there were 146,750 people on food stamps. Let's assume half of them drive a car and that vouchers would be given out. In such a case, each person would be given less than 14 vouchers per year. And for those of you taking pride in the fact that buses can use the express lanes for free, I ask, do you ride the bus around? And if so, why not? So I ask, what would it take for a requirement of 40 vouchers per month per person? Would it take me starting a petition to get signatures and support? Would it take me coming here? Would it take me coming here with to CRTPO meetings? Low-income people who you would be unwilling to help? Would it take me getting on my knees and begging for your compassion on those less blessed than we currently are? CRTPO board, what would it take? Thank you.
Thank you. Moving through our next agenda item, Neil, will you help us with the ethics and awareness conflict of interest reminder?
In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflict of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any of the matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved.
Hearing none, we'll move on. Our consent agenda. Could I get a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
I think everybody got a motion in there and a second. All those in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, our post census functional classification review. Curtis Bridges, there he is. Welcome, Curtis.
All right, good evening. We do want to bring our post-census functional classification system review back to you this evening. The last time you saw this was in July for this group. Since that time, we've done some continued coordination with NCDOT and have a finalized product to bring to you. And the request that we have of you this evening is to adopt the functional classification changes for the CRTPO planning area for submittal to NCDOT and ultimate approval by FHWA. So what is functional class? You've heard this definition a few times, but it's worth repeating briefly. Functional classification of roadways defines the role each element of the roadway network plays in serving travel needs. What that looks like for us, what we typically see is these highway functional classification categories: principal arterials, which are interstates, other freeways and expressways, and other principal arterials; minor arterials, collectors, which are both major and minor, and then local roads. So why are we modifying functional classification? FHWA must review and update functional class nationwide post-decennial census. So this is our kind of 10-year update. It informs data management and reporting, as well as design and maintenance at the state and local level. And then federal legislation, importantly, continues to use functional classification in determining eligibility for funding under the federal aid program. So Transportation Planning Division, NCDOT, worked with FHWA on developing a schedule that they've had to kind of follow in this process. That's involved working, of course, with all the MPOs in the state, and then getting to a point of submitting to FHWA in September, beginning in September, and then FHWA's approval in November of 2025. We were tasked with essentially reviewing and evaluating our current local functional class networks, identifying roadways proposed for modification, and then verifying that existing roadway data, and then entering desired modification data, meaning the functional class that we want to move to, where we do want to make changes. So at the end of the day, we've received change requests from 14 submitters. Again, that was an iterative review process with NCDOT Transportation Planning Division. We consolidated adjoining segments. Future segments not in the STIP were removed. Revisions to suggested classifications were made. Segments were added to the network to ensure network connectivity. And then we also coordinated with our neighbors in Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln, and Cabarrus, Rowan, MPO. That produced a total of 140, actually that number is a little incorrect, 142 change requests for the final. So with that, again, and just briefly, we had, again, local staff review in March and from March through June of this year. This came to you for information in July. We are requesting your approval here in September, and we expect Transportation Planning Division to begin submitting these to FHWA also here in September. So with that, again, the action request is that you adopt or approve the functional class changes for our planning area and submittal to DOT and FHWA. And I will stop to see if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Bridges? To those changes? Sounds like we have a motion to adopt the functional classification changes for the CRTPO planning area for submittal to NCDOT and ultimate approval by FHWA. Councilmember Driggs has got a motion. Is there a second? Yep. Mayor Becker's got a second. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, while Neil is making his way up there, our NCDOT Board Chair, Tony Lathrop, is here, and he's gonna have to leave a little bit early, so I wanted him to make a few comments before he did leave, so we'll let Neil get settled in, but go ahead and give us some comments.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be quick. We had a very good Beyond 77 Executive Committee meeting here beforehand with some interesting ideas about building business support for projects here. This Friday is the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene, and I'll be up in the mountains on I-40 with the governor and the federal highways guy and the secretary and some others to just commemorate that. The federal government announced yesterday that they are obligating another $1 billion+ for Helene recovery for transportation. And that's not really new money, but it's basically a better commitment to it in their budget for North Carolina. So it helps bring more certainty to what we're going to get reimbursed. We got a new secretary that's starting October 1, Daniel Johnson, who has been for a good long time the general counsel of the department and is going to be very solid. We had a very successful transportation summit. I know you were there and a number of other folks in the room were there. It was over 1,000 people came, and I would urge everybody to come to that next year. It's a very, very good way to learn about new policy things, but also maybe as important to see a lot of key players in the industry. And finally, we have our October board meeting next week in Raleigh, and we'll keep on keeping on. That's what I got.
Thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
bringing that report back and all that you're doing for the board and sending our Charlotte region message up there to Raleigh. It's big. Okay, Neil, we'll move along to our 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan continued update.
Thank you. Just a quick agenda here for our presentation tonight. I'll provide a quick overview of the schedule. Allison Flewitt with Kimley Horn will provide an overview of the conclusion of the congestion management process. This is a component that's required to be built into the every MTP that we do. Allison will also provide a overview of the non-roadway revenues. Once again, this is another federal requirement. We're going to be seeking action of this board on approving those non-roadway revenues at the board meeting next month. And then I'll close this out with looking ahead as we kind of transition out of some of these tasks and more into writing the report and closing out the MTP early next year. So many of you know 2025 is a big year for the development of this plan. You can see we've closed out the scenario planning and revenue forecast in the first quarter of this calendar year. This presentation will really be the conclusion of the congestion management process component within the MTP. The project evaluation process that began in January. And last month, this board took action to adopt the fiscally constrained roadway and transit project list that's folded into the 2055 MTP. The second phase of public engagement was focused around the draft fiscally constrained project list in June and July. We will have a third phase of public engagement. This graphic is incorrect. It'll actually be the first quarter of 2026. And again, that'll be focused around the draft report, which really rolls all of these tasks into one collective document. The staff and the consultants will be working throughout the fall to prepare the 2055 MTP document prior to the third phase of public engagement. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison Flewitt with Kimley Horn, and she'll provide you overview and outcomes of the congestion management process.
Thanks, Neil. So just to give a quick reminder about the congestion management process, as Neil said, this is a federally required process for any MPO that's designated as a transportation management area. So that includes any urban area with a population over 200,000. This can be done as a standalone component, or it can be folded into your metropolitan transportation plan. And I think one of the advantages CRTPO is elected to do this alongside the MTP is it lets some of the data that we're generating as part of this congestion management process be considered as we're coming up with our recommendations for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. One of the things that's unique about a congestion management process is that we're actually looking at the congestion now. For the MTP, as you all are well aware, we're looking all the way out until 2055, so we're looking at future conditions. But this is really focused on the here and now, some of the issues that we're seeing out there currently. Something else that's helpful that CRTPO has long put in place is the guidance with a CMP task force. This actually predated a lot of the effort that was put in place with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of what came out of that as we go into this. One of the big things that you'll see in congestion management process are the identification of congestion management strategies. This was something that the task force was very involved with, coming up with what these strategies could be. I'll talk about what those are in a moment. Essentially, these are things that should be considered for MTP capacity adding recommendations. So essentially, can we identify one of these strategies that helps reduce the need for capacity addition or reduces single occupancy vehicle travel? There are also strategies should be evaluated for our congested corridor. So even if we don't have a specific recommendation that's been identified in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we know that there are other policy initiatives, programs, or even project recommendations in other MPO or local plans. So it's just helpful to have a broader knowledge of some of those congested corridor and conditions. So when I talk about a congested corridor, this is where a lot of the data that we had available at our disposal using some probe data. So that's essentially cell phone data that we're able to take a look at and understand things like travel time index. So how much worse is our travel time compared to like a free flow travel speed? Or using our travel demand model, the volume to capacity ratio. Is the volume on our roadway exceeding the available capacity on that roadway? So we looked at those different tools. We had a lot of great participation with our MTP steering committee, our advisory committee, and also the TCC. Ultimately, the TCC members did weigh in on the potential strategies to apply those to the congested corridors. So I mentioned these congested corridors. We actually had 42 of these identified across the region. You can see we're not looking at small segments here. We're looking at some of those larger segments where we see those broad-based congestion issues. There was actually an online map that was generated as a part of this process to help all of those committees that you saw kind of guide some of their feedback and directions as we went through this process. In addition to those congested corridors, we also had a look at our fiscally constrained project list. And you all have seen this slide before. We were looking at those new fiscally constrained projects that were identified as part of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So in other words, if a project was identified in your TIP, that was not something that we were considering here. Why? Because funding has already been obligated for those projects. We expect they've had a little bit more definition that's been kind of identified to go along with that cost. So we don't want to necessarily put additional expectations on those projects at this time. Similarly, for our unfunded projects, those are beyond the life of what we expect we can reasonably fund by 2055. So that wasn't a part of what we were considering here. I mentioned strategy selection. We actually had 59 different strategies that were identified by the CMP task force to help address congestion in our planning area. They centered around freeway strategies, non-freeway strategies, regional strategies, and other new strategies. And this could look at anything from multimodal type of improvements to something that's more focused on auto movement. And then at our August 6th staff meeting, jurisdiction representatives were actually asked to help identify those strategies for each one of our fiscally constrained projects and congested corridors. So we asked them to review the list of the strategies that could be assigned to each one of those projects and review using that online map that I showed the QR code for just a moment ago, and select any strategy that they felt could be applied to each one of those projects or corridors. Something that's important to note here is that we're identifying those potential strategies. This is not a binding commitment for a particular project or corridor, so we're not setting anything in stone, but this is a really helpful direction as we then go back to these projects or back to these corridors later on and say, hey, what could we do? What could we be considering perhaps as they're moving forward into design or implementation? The compiled spreadsheets were ultimately emailed to the TCC members and then passed along to you all as well. So that sums up our congestion management process. This will ultimately be included as a chapter within the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So now I'm going to turn the page and talk about our non-roadway revenues. As Neil mentioned, our intention today is to provide you all with some overarching information about our non-roadway revenues. Next month, you can anticipate this coming back to you for adoption. So you've seen a lot from us in the past about revenues. We were primarily focused at that time on our roadway capital funding. We need to get out in front of that pretty far ahead of time because that drives a lot of the conversations that we're having around prioritization and then fiscal constraint determination. But today we're going to be focusing on the other things that you see on the screen, our public transportation, maintenance, and MPO discretionary forecasts. It is a requirement as a part of the MTP that all of these different elements are being considered as a part of our metropolitan transportation planning process. Another friendly reminder, our horizon years. I know I show these every single time, but it's always nice to get a refresher. For the 2055 MTP, we have 4 sets of horizon years. We have that first 2025 year where we're kind of capturing some of those projects that are happening right now. And then we have 3 10-year bands, 2035, 2045, and 2055. So not only do we organize our fiscally constrained project lists in this way, but we also organize our revenues in this way. So I'm going to start with the public transportation forecast, and then we'll walk through the other 2 revenue sources as well. So this was something that as we started out our process, we knew that we wanted to pay some special attention to the public transportation forecast this time. You all are aware that there are 4 different public transportation agencies in this region, and so there's a lot of coordination that needs to go into the determination of these revenue forecasts. The other thing that I'll note is when we talk to our transit providers, what they're being asked to do in their day-to-day in terms of determining some of their revenue projections often is not in alignment in terms of numbers of years that they're looking out for their plans or for their requirements. So we need to work together to make sure that what we're generating to satisfy the requirements of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan reflects their needs, their priorities, and is a nice translation between some of the things they're generating over to the MTP timeframe. We did that this time by utilizing the CRTPO Transit Providers Work Group. We started with an initial kickoff meeting where we described our process and the intent. We followed up with interviews with each transit provider to understand the data that they had available about their revenue sources, learn a little bit more about their specific conditions, and then we came back to the same Transit Providers Work Group meeting to share what we had learned, make sure that we were on track with those initial findings from our methodology. We actually then had another set of follow-up meetings to dig into some of the details on all of those things and confirm our revenue projections, and came back to the Transit Providers Work Group meeting a final time as well. Some of the things that we have to consider with transit revenues. Of course, those Federal Transit Administration funding sources are a big part of what goes into this process, but we're also considering local revenues that may be a part of a transit agency's funding, taxes, fares, debt proceeds, or even future funding mechanisms, as well as CRTPO discretionary funds that may be going toward transit, and even non-traditional funding partnerships as well. One of the particular focuses this time around for the 2055 MTP was to think about the methodology for our transit revenues. We wanted to create a replicable approach. So essentially putting in place a process this time that we could document and give to CRTPO so that the next time when they do the 2060 plan, they can open up their records and say, oh yeah, let's go through the same set of meetings and data sources and hopefully have something that's a little bit easier to generate going forward the next time. So that meant that we needed to look at readily available data sources and identify some of those planned expenditures for each of our agencies. So as we looked at this, we started to kind of group into two categories. First, looking at Union County, ICATS, and Mecklenburg Transit kind of together within this methodology. Just thinking about the scale as well as the data that was available, we did find some commonalities in terms of how we could structure our approach for defining the revenues. Now, that being said, all of these are very unique agencies with very unique growth considerations and things that they needed to share with us. But we were able to look at the National Transit Database. This is something that every transit agency actually has to report into with their capital and operating information in terms of their revenues each year. So this was a great data source for us to use for all three of these agencies. We looked at some of their historic data, their percentage changes, and then projected that out into the future using a conservative approach. When you see some of the outcome of that, and I promise you I'm not going to read all of these numbers, we look at this in year of expenditure dollars. That's consistent with all of the way that we're reporting everything else in our financial planning for Iredell County, Mecklenburg Transportation System, and Union County Transportation. Now, there is some deviation as you go through those numbers. That just reflects kind of the unique characteristics of each of these agencies in terms of their fleet size, their growth rate, and kind of going on out into the future. You also notice that we are reporting operating and capital. That is a requirement for us for transit. We need to be looking at both sides of that equation. Now, once we had that approach well defined for those three agencies, we also needed to think about how best to gather information and report for CATS. And here we had a unique opportunity. CATS has been doing some recent transit system planning, and with that, some revenue development has already taken place in the very recent past. So this involves some additional coordination with CATS to obtain their existing source data from their current budget, their current adopted operating and capital improvement plans, and their transit system plan assumptions. So we put all of those things together to make sure that we had a great look at what they were doing from a revenue standpoint. And I want to point out some unique things about CATS, because one of the things that you all heard for the first time this go around as we were putting together our fiscally constrained plan is that there were some transit projects that were included as a part of that fiscally constrained plan, and they did come from CATS. So when we're thinking about the revenue side of this equation, we're looking at this in kind of two different ways. First, we're thinking about what I call our existing sources. This is essentially our system as it currently stands, keeping in mind the anticipated growth of that system kind of going on out into the future. That's what you see reflected here with the operating and capital projections that are reflected through all of these different horizon years, again, shown in year of expenditure dollars. However, we know that there is also the adopted transit system plan. You've seen these slides and they've been represented very capably by Kelly Goforth at CATS. I will not attempt to do that the same justice that she did. But I simply want to point out that some of the big takeaways that we had in our conversations with CATS when looking at the rapid transit corridors is that all of those projects are in their early stages of planning with reasonable conservative assumptions for their cost estimates and revenue projections. And importantly, for our determination of fiscal constraint, the costs and revenues are balanced to support the successful implementation of the transit program. So what you will see as you get into our revenue side of things, something that looks shockingly similar to the fiscally constrained portion of this on the project side. We are looking at those project costs to essentially be equivalent to what we anticipate those revenues, because that has all been included as part of the transit system plan and the work that was done to kind of get to where we are right here. One quick note about what you see on screen here. This is shown in 2025 dollars. Ultimately, everything will be shown in year of expenditure, so it's apples to apples. We have just retained this because this is how this was kind of outwardly communicated by CATS as part of their planning, and we know that there's a lot of kind of information being shared in this, so we want to have some consistent numbers out in the wild right now. So that's our look at transit. Really quickly moving into maintenance. What I'm talking about here is roadway maintenance. So our good start here is historic maintenance funding. We're actually able to obtain this from NCDOT at a county level. There's a lot of great data. I think you can go all the way back to 1989 and get this county by county. We didn't go that far back. We looked 2018 to 2023 for each county. And then we had a modest growth rate, 2% inflation annually, going from 2026 to 2055. Now, obviously in Union County, we do not have the full portion of that county within CRTPO. So we did an adjustment looking at the percentage of state-maintained roadway miles within the CRTPO portion of the county compared with the entirety of the county. And that's what you see here, kind of coming up with our maintenance forecast for our roadways for Iredell, Mecklenburg, and the CRTPO portion of Union County. And last but not least, our MPO discretionary forecast. First, a quick reminder about what I'm talking about when I talk about our MPO discretionary forecast. We're talking about funding sources, including the Surface Transportation Block Grant Direct Attributable Funds, the Transportation Alternatives Program, the Carbon Reduction Program funds, and the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality funds. This does include and encompass roadway and non-roadway projects. And these are administered by CRTPO through a call for projects that happens once a year, typically in the August to October timeframe. It's important to note that the discretionary revenues are a subset of the state and federal revenues that were adopted within the roadway capital revenues. So in other words, when I show you these discretionary numbers, they are not in addition to what you have already adopted. They are part of what you've already adopted. And then you can see these broken out by the various funding sources. Just a quick note, CMAQ and carbon reduction are not forecasted out 2036 to 2055. We know for carbon reduction that that funding source does have an expiration date, so that's why that's not forecasted out. For CMAQ, that has not yet been communicated to be definitively available through those later years. So just to be conservative, we have not shown values during that time period. And again, all of that shown in year of expenditure dollars. All right, I'm going to turn this back to Neil to wrap us up.
Thanks, Allison. So just a couple more slides here. Preview of the October 15th board meeting. We are going to be requesting action on the adoption of what Allison just presented, the 2055 MTP non-roadway capital revenues. Preview of the November board meeting, because we typically don't meet in December. There may also be some turnover associated with the municipal elections in November. We like to take an advanced action to recommend the release of the draft 2055 MTP report and the draft air quality conformity report for public review at the time that the documents are ready. And what we're anticipating the documents to be ready for is that third phase of public engagement, January 12th through February 10th. So with the board potentially taking the advanced action in November, not having a meeting most likely in December, we will continue to update you all at the January meeting as to the public engagement period and the status of the draft report. So that concludes our presentation. Happy to take any questions that you all have.
Questions for Neil or Allison? A lot of great information. We'll hope those dollars all come through, right?
Yes, that's right.
Good, great. We'll see in October for the next phase of that. The moving on our agenda, Agenda item number 8's our request for a CTP amendment, plan amendment for the US 74 and Rocky River Road grade separation. So Brian Hester's here from Monroe. Brian? Or Bryson, I'm sorry. I apologize. So
Yeah,
I got to get the
Bryson.
stronger cheater. So
you're fine.
welcome. We're glad you're here.
Good to be here. Good evening, members of the CRTPO board. Bryson Hester, Transportation Planner, City of Monroe. And this evening, I'm here to give an informational update on Monroe's comprehensive transportation plan amendment for a grade separation at the intersection of US 74 and Rocky River Road. As I just mentioned, this is just an informational item at this time, so no vote is requested. We'll be back to the TCC and board next month for action. So a little bit of background on this project. It was originally identified through Indian Trails Transportation Master Plan and CTP highway recommendations with the help of Union County and their consultant RS&H. The intersection was chosen for a grade separation because it's roughly equal distance between Monroe or downtown Monroe and downtown Indian Trail, the two largest municipalities in Union County. October 8th, 2024, Monroe City Council passed a resolution to initiate the amendment process. And fast forward to March, we gave presentations to TCC and board for information. In May, it was placed on the consent agenda to open the public comment period. May 21st through June 20th was our 30-day public comment period, which was advertised through a social media campaign. And on June the 17th, we had our in-person public meeting. In July, staff analyzed feedback and we prepared our final amendment package. And then on August the 12th, Monroe City Council endorsed the amendment, including the attached public comment period responses. September 4th, we presented the public comment information to TCC, and here we are on the 24th, presenting to the board for information. Okay, so we got a lot of engagement in terms of during this public comment period, 193 total responses, 188 of which were digital, 5 were paper. Our in-person public comment period was June the 17th, 5 to 7:30 at Monroe City Hall. That's where all 5 paper survey responses came from. Some of them filled out digital surveys before they got there. So, and then into the meat of our what we discovered from our public comment period, we had 101 comments of the 193 for support, 27 were concerns, and then we had 65 that were neutral or unsure. The key takeaway from these comments were majority of folks who answered see the grade separation as a needed safety and congestion fix. Nearly all responses mention dissatisfaction with the intersection as it stands currently. Most of the concerns relate to construction impacts and funding, and in turn, a general misunderstanding of the CTP amendment process. Inclusion in a CTP amendment process is nothing more than a 50-year stencil. It's a minimum requirement. So for many projects to be eligible for federal funding. So it's in no way tying money to the project. So that's something we'll continue to work on, not just through education, but through clarity of our education materials, knowing our audience and making information accessible, digestible to the public for this amendment and transportation planning, public facing materials moving forward. So this concludes the update. Any questions?
Any questions for Bryson in regards to that? Okay, hearing none, we'll look forward to this in October. And does anybody have any objection to that being on our consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll put this on the consent agenda and save you that trip up this direction. But,
Appreciate it.
yeah, good luck with your funding on that. Hopefully, you guys going to go for a Chrissy grant?
Uh,
Are you guys going to try to apply for a Chrissy grant for funding?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. It's kind of a ways off. Because it's waiting on two widening projects, one of which is not even funding for construction.
Gotcha. Good. Good. Super. Thank you. All right, our next CTP plan amendment request is from the town of Huntersville. Stephen Trott is here for the, how do you guys say that in Huntersville? Verhoff or Verhoff? Or-
Yes.
Yes, there you go. I was gonna say, we say it a couple different ways up here in Mooresville, but talk to us about this alignment study. Welcome, Stephen.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. And Stephen Trott with the town of Huntersville. And a little bit similar to the last item that we talked about, it's alignment study, but we're at a different point in the process. We're just at the very start of the process. So tonight is just for information only before even a public comment period. So the next step in the process would be to request public comment period so that we can start to receive those public comments that were like those shared from the last presentation, get that feedback, and then see where this goes. So want to talk a little bit about, start out with where we are, where we were, and then talk about where this may go forward. So Verhoff Drive has an alignment that was adopted actually back in 2002 by this board. It was named a little bit different, Mecklenburg Union Metropolitan Planning Organization at that time. But there was an alignment that went through that public involvement process and then was adopted back in 2002. Since then, as you can imagine, things have changed a little bit, as most areas have in the county. So a portion of the alignment has been constructed. There's also development that has occurred and is looking to occur in the area. And as dealing with most road projects and looking at corridors, there's utilities out there. So we have to work through those items. So just want to show you a map. Try not to read everything on there. There's a lot of information on here. It's hard to see, but this was the map, as I understand it, that was adopted back in 2002, showing the corridor. Really highlighting, really trying to show what's on the map. You can see on the left side of the page is Old Statesville Road. That's a major north-south road through Huntersville. Then we also have Asbury Chapel Road, another north-south road in Huntersville. And then what's highlighted kind of in pink across, that's the alignment that was adopted back in 2002. You can see it went from just west of Old Statesville Road or NC 115 all the way to the east past Asbury Chapel Road. As part of this alignment study process, we're looking at just a portion of this alignment that was adopted back then. So again, mentions part of the alignment's been constructed since 2002. The portion that's kind of highlighted in the green box on the screen, that portion's been constructed. If you're familiar with the area or you drive through there, there's a bridge on Verhoff that goes over 115 and over the railroad that runs parallel right to the road there. But then it stops. And so the remaining portion that we're looking at is that highlighted area in pink, that section between where that bridge ends over to Asbury Chapel Road. So the town has said, hey, let's take a look at that. Let's just see if there are other possibilities. If we look at it, let's utilize what's already been built. That'd be a good idea. And then we want to check with agencies that may have some impact or review as part of the alignment, NCDOT, Duke Energy, as there's a transmission corridor that runs through there. And then the corridor also crosses Colonial Pipeline. So those are some of the larger entities that we look for just design criteria. How do we want to look to design the road? So a couple of different alternatives have been developed. We're trying to go to point A to point B. There could be a lot of different alternatives. These are just a couple of those. So a lot of or both of these alternatives are very similar to what's already been adopted. It's a little bit of a change here or there. You can see some go above, below, and then across the, I guess, Duke power easement that you can see there. It's not just one transmission line. There's actually 3 parallel transmission lines that run through there. So that'll be a key item as we look at this. And then also more on the western side, the Colonial Pipeline. That'll have to be crossed. So another thing to keep in mind. If you look at this, and then if you remember back just a few slides ago, what it looked like before, things have changed. There's development that's occurred on the left side or west of the page. There's county park property now. So there's things that have changed since that original alignment has been adopted. So what we'd like to do is start that public discussion. Get the public's feedback on this. Talk to the property owners along the corridor. Get their feedback. Is one of the alignments a great idea, or is there an alignment that hasn't been adopted or hasn't been presented yet that may be better? But we'd like to start that public comment process to get that feedback. So here tonight, just again, present for information only. I would like to come back next month to request opening a public comment period so we can start that dialogue between property owners and the community. We plan to host a public information meeting at Town Hall, put it out on our social media channels, put it on the website so folks can provide that feedback, and then depending on the feedback, see what that is, and then go from there. If there's one of the alternatives that have been presented is great, then we'd probably look to move forward with that. But if not, we may start this over again if there's other alternatives. Once we get through that full process, then come back through the approval process with action by the town board, and then bringing it back before CRTPO for recommendation. And that's what I have. Be glad to take questions.
Questions?
Yeah, I had a question. When you present this later on, will you be able to present kind of a pros and cons of the different alternatives that you'll be reviewing or considering?
We sure can.
Yeah, I think that'd be very helpful, I think, for everybody just to know sort of why one is better than the other or why you're choosing one over another. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Driggs?
Just quickly, if next month we approve opening the public comment period, that is without prejudice to any subsequent decision this body might make, right? In other words, yes, by all means, let's take the next step. But we have check-in after that in terms of any actual change. Yeah, I want to be clear.
Yes, we would look to come back and present the comments, I guess, as the previous presentation did, come back and show what the comments are, and then decide where to go from there.
Right. Other questions? Does anybody have any opposition to this being on consent agenda next month that would just be opening the public comment period from October 16th to November 14th? Okay, so we'll go ahead and put that on consent agenda next month, save you a trip down.
Great, thank you.
Great, good luck with that. All right, we're sailing right along, guys. Item number 10, our FTA Section 5307 Transit Agency Annual Reports. Mr. Leonard.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jarrell Leonard with CRTPO. I'm the transit planner. And we're going to talk about the FTA 5307 report. And for clarity review, 2 of the recipients will not be available tonight from Union and Iredell counties. They have a conflict on their schedule, but they did send their regards, as well as they did attach their reports in the packet for your viewing. So the agenda for the 5307 annual reports, as you see on your screen, showing the annual requirements, as well as the background eligible activities, CRTPO's role in the 5307 allocation, also the 2024 funding for the Charlotte urban area, as well as sequentially the annual report presentations per entity. So the reason why we having this report is because in a memorandum of understanding that was signed in July 2021, that it specifies as follow in the blue. Each year by September 1, there needs to be an annual report provided to the CRTPO on the performance of activities related to 5307 funds as well as 5339 funds, any type of rescission, and these need to be specified and sent to the CRTPO board and TCC by September 1 each year. A little bit of background on the Federal Transit Administration formula program known as 5307. It is awarded to areas that are 50,000 or greater residents considered urban. Funds are used to plan, allocate, or operate, purchase vehicles, as well as build any type of facilities, including maintenance facilities, purchase vehicles, also build transit stops within, say, a planning area. It also provides aid to anybody who is considered disabled or senior in that 50,000 or greater urban area, and also other users who were considered disabled. And within our area, we have 4 transportation providers who rely on these 5307 funds primarily. Technically, there are 5 in the urban area, but 4 in our planning area for clarity. So the primary activity, as you see, is planning, engineering, design. That is planning projects that can create plans, as well as helping aid doing regional as well as local area transit plans. Capital investments, overhaul, acquisition of buses, vehicles, or vans, also maintenance and passenger facilities such as an intermodal facility, also ADA compliant complementary repair transit services are possible with this category. Finally and foremost, operations. Any entity that has 100 vehicles or less per the National Transit Database, which issues that report each year, can have an operating expense or operating assistance that they can use with 5307. Once again, kind of describing our role more in detail. In July 2021, the CRTPO board adopted a memorandum of understanding related to a new formula as well as allocation through the initiative known as the Transit Education Initiative, TEI. The task force assisted with the distribution of program funds and came up with a new way, which is the MOU document we're referring to. Since then, in September 2023, the Transit Providers Work Group has taken on these activities. So now we coordinate through the Transit Providers Work Group here at CRTPO to annually CRTPO annual report for 5307 funds. And on this slide, you see the allocation from the previous year. This is the federal fiscal year 24, which is also the funds we're going to be talking about per entity. CATS received 23 million. As you can see, Iredell received 786,000. Mecklenburg received 1.8 million. Union County 1.4 million. And in the South Carolina portion, which says the city of Rock Hill and RFAS also does business for SCDOT, they received 139,000. And the overall total for the urban area, the Charlotte urban area in general, was a little bit over 27.3 million for 24. Now we're going to move into the presentations. Once again, Union County is not available, but this is their report. It is going to be sent to you in the packet. And the first immediate presenter will be Gina or Andre Amos from Mecklenburg County Transportation. Andre?
Good evening, our board members. How you doing, Commissioner? Good to see you again. Thank you. Well, I'm not going to take up too much of your time tonight, but thank you all for coming, hearing us out. Just to give you a brief overview of who MTS is. Again, my name is Andre. I'm the Senior Social Services Manager for MTS. It's a pleasure to speak with you all tonight. So a little bit about who we are as MTS. We pride ourselves on driving with empathy, riding with dignity, and maintaining independence for our seniors. That's who we focus on. Our senior citizens, the most vulnerable in the community, making sure they have reliable transportation, again, with empathy, and making sure they know they're valued. MTS provides mandated and non-mandated non-emergency trips. Customers go on to Medicaid,
and non-Medicaid trips, nutritional employment, post-secondary, and adult daycare appointments and sites. MTS serves Mecklenburg County, excuse me, with an estimated population of 1.26 million. There's an estimated 157,847 individuals ages 65 and above. We also have 5.6% population that live with a disability and are under the age of 65. That comes to 67,552 individuals. And again, all this data came from the US Census table, so it's pretty accurate data. Our fleet size, we have 25 LTVs, otherwise known as cutaways. We also have 3 LTVs, passenger vans we use for supervisors and to do a little bit of shuttling around our operators. We have a really large presence in our contract vendors. We have 8 vendors that do a majority of our trips. And when we say vendors, we're talking about the cab companies that we work hand in hand with. Average monthly passenger trips are 26,109. Average monthly vehicle revenue miles is a whopping 176,000. And then I'm going to have Gina come up. She's going to talk a bit about the tip amendments. That's her expertise. I'm the driving man. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Gina Merrill, the Grant Administrator for Mecklenburg County MTS. So we actually did not have any tip amendments in fiscal year 24. And we have a bit, about 8.4 million 5307 funding that has been allocated to us, but we have not used. And predominantly, primarily the reason for that is because we still have ARPA and CRSA funds in 2024. So as a county, wanting to make sure that we use the best use of our funds, with ARPA and CRSA, we didn't have any county match requirement. With 5307, we do have a 20% cash requirement. So we decided, we made a decision last year to use our ARPA and CRSA funds all the way through. We did fully spend our CRSA funds in 2024. We still have about $1 million in ARPA funds that we're going to be using in 25. However, we do have a plan to use all of these funds. After the $1 million in ARPA funds are done, we will start using our we expect to use our fiscal year 21 and 22 5307s in this fiscal year 26 for our expenses. As you can see, the majority of our all we have is capital because all we serve are ADA. So the majority of our funds are spent towards the capital cost of contracting, which are our vendors, preventive maintenance, and then our software and non-capital expenses. We just started a new software system called EcoLane last year. We implemented that, I believe, in February of this calendar year. So we have to pay a monthly expense for that. So that's where part of this money, the 5307, will be spent. So here is what our steps are to use the 8.455 million in the next couple years. You could see the numbers that we have here. Like I said, we expect to use them in fiscal year 26. And then one of the things that I did want to mention is CRTPO awarded us a 5303 grant to do a microtransit feasibility study to find out whether or not that mode of transportation would be feasible within our system or next to our system or to replace our system. We plan on having that done this fiscal year. We're getting our request for quotes out right now for our consultants. And so we do have money set aside in 5307 that if the county and that if that feasibility study shows that the county should go towards a microtransit route, we will be requesting to use our 5307 money to implement that. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Yes. We do have a question. Councilmember Altman, Commissioner.
Thank you so much for your service to Mecklenburg County. So I'm concerned, are there any CARPA monies that are not encumbered? Because they would have needed to be encumbered by now, for sure.
So all of our
If not spent.
Right. So all of our ARPA and our CRSA funds are encumbered right now. And we have that, the agreement with the federal government in place. We are going to be doing a few tip amendments for this fiscal year to encumber, make sure all of the expected amount of 21 and 22 funds that we are going to need will be encumbered.
So you don't have any concern about forfeiting any monies?
No, not at this moment, no. We've been in
Okay.
constant contact with the FTA, excuse me, about what's going on and talked to them about our plan, the fact that, you know, we didn't use our ARPA and CURSA money as quickly as we thought we were going to. So I had a long conversation with them last year, and we came to an agreement that we would use the ARPA and the CURSA money first, and then this fiscal year, so 26 of the county fiscal year, we would put in the TIP amendments to start utilizing the 21 and 22. And all of those are 9 to 10 years, so we still have several years before they expire.
So when you say unobligated funds, that's different than unencumbered?
Yes, so unencumbered would be once we receive the funds and we budget them, we actually encumber them to say, this is what we're, within the county budget system, we're gonna spend the money on this, and we're gonna put $1 million aside for Prestige Cab. So our unobligated funds are what, let me go back to this slide. So right now we have these funds. They have been allocated to us at MTS, but we don't have them obligated yet. When we do the TIP amendment and we go through that process, we're going to say how we want to obligate the 1.232 million and the 1.559 million. And that comes to you, that goes to the state, and then goes to the federal government. And after we get all of that done and we have the award agreement from the federal government, that's when we'll appropriate it in our county budget and encumber it for the expenses that we have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Other questions?
I had the exact same 3 questions, so.
Okay, everybody got the memo. Any other questions? Okay, great. Great job. Well, I'll give you a hand for coming to
And
memorize those
the
numbers.
next presenter will be the Charlotte Area Transit System. Chad Howell will be speaking.
Good evening, board members. As Gerald said, I am Chad Howell. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for CATS, and I'll be presenting our 2025 5307 annual report. I always get that wrong on the first time. CATS anticipated providing approximately 16.2 million rides in 2025 across all of our modes of transportation. While that is an improvement, as you'll see, our ridership has not yet returned to pre-COVID levels, but we do anticipate it continuing to increase across all of our modes into 2026 and into 2027. Primarily in the last few years, we've used our funds to pay our debt service, of which we have about $280 million in outstanding debt, or toward the purchase or maintenance of the vehicles that we have with our we have a $264 million operating budget. And so we've been very good. FTA has worked with us, and I'll touch on this in a later slide, to ensure that we are able to put the monies onto items where we can quickly draw them and quickly utilize that money and bring it into our local coffers. As you'll see, as you look back at 21 and 23, it was spread over a little bit of a larger group of projects. Again, FTA's worked really closely with us to consolidate that in a way that allows us to quickly turn it over into 23, 24. We anticipate that same happened in 25, and we planned and budgeted for the same to happen in 2026. Let me touch a little bit on our COVID ARPA CRISA funds here. We have been steadily spending through these and have been really successful in spending a lot of them down. Much like the previous presenters, our MTS team, we have also been in touch with Region 4 and have been assured that the funds that are outstanding are not in any danger. We have secured those funds. We have signed grant agreements with them, and they've also, again, worked really closely with us to be able to reallocate some of those funds or use them in a way with some of the maintenance work we've done on our light rail in particular. Those funds were put aside for that. In future years, we've actually accelerated some of that work, and they've allowed us to bring that money forward and go ahead and use it. So we are spending through that quite well. Again, as we touched on in 2025, because of a shift in our philosophy to minimize what we would put into the grant agreements, and because of the tempo of the spending that we had the last few years. We have been able to spend through the monies that have almost every bit every year that has come to us. We're also projecting that forward into 2026. And because of that, we have zero unobligated dollars outstanding. And that concludes the presentation. Are there any questions?
Great. Questions? Yes, Mayor Higdon?
Yeah, thank you for the report. Can you explain the big fall off in the federal funding for security?
Yeah, the
Or
federal
find-
funding for security here. So what we've referenced here on slide, let me do this. So this is the requirement. So there is a 0.75% requirement for all 5307 funds to be spent on enhanced safety and security in transit. And so that is what's represented here. Our actual spending on safety and security much exceeds $230,000 a year. The 924,791 is multiple years. It's around $230,000 a year that's there. But trust me, our safety and security spending far exceeds this amount here. This is a set aside for 5307.
Okay, I see now that was multiple years, so thank you.
I had to look myself. I was like, wow, that's a great question, Mayor. It's multiple years. It's just the way it's shown on the chart.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Chad. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yes, ma'am.
In lieu of a presentation, the Rock Hill Fort Mill area transportation study has provided written correspondence that we can distribute to you all. It specifies their activities through federal fiscal year 2017 through 2024, and it shows the specificity on their CARES as well as ARPA funds using 5307, and in lieu of giving a presentation. Are there any questions related to that?
Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Super.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Cheryl. All right. Almost on the home stretch, everybody. Stick with us. Agenda item number 11, our FY 2025 public engagement summary. Merritt McCulley. Welcome, Merritt.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Merritt McCulley. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for CRTPO, and today I'm here to talk about the FY 25 public engagement and what we plan on doing in FY 26, or what we're already doing, since that's the fiscal year that we are in currently. And so what better way to talk about public engagement than with the CRTPO team? And so public engagement, at least successful public engagement, always starts at the interpersonal level. And many of you have interactions with our staff on an individual level, but it's rare to see all of us in the same place at the same time, except for earlier when we had two big checks here. But what I want to highlight throughout the presentation is just the concept of soft engagement, where we're doing engagement with our partners, with different nonprofit organizations, and within our jurisdictions, not just when there's a public comment period, but in between those times when there's plans and initiatives being engaged for. And so here are some of our stats from our engagement in FY 25, including a lot of in-person events, such as our community events, not just those ones that happen during the MTP public comment period or during the TIP public comment period, but even before those, as well as events not just with the general public, but with our elected officials and with our peers in the transportation planning space, as well as different interactions with the media and newsletters that we send out and other activities through our website. And so we can't talk about engagement in a post-COVID world without talking about digital public engagement. And so at the beginning of this calendar year, we expanded our digital reach to include a few different platforms. So we were already on YouTube, but now we use YouTube to live stream all of our public meetings, such as we're doing right now. We also expanded to Instagram, which is the most popular social media platform on the internet, as well as to Blue Sky, which was the fastest growing social media platform on the internet. We also expanded to LinkedIn in order to connect better with our fellow MPO partners and with our transportation planning professionals in the community and beyond. And so this resulted in 8,000 different individuals engaged. For those of you who aren't familiar with social media marketing terms, engagement refers to the amounts of comments and shares and interactions that people had with the posts and the content that we were creating. We had 53,000 media impressions, which means that our content appeared on someone's screen 53,000 times. So maybe it was one person streaming our stuff 53,000 times. I highly doubt it. And then we have 33,000 website views, and we really pride ourselves in having a website that can really be a one-stop shop for all of our plans and initiatives. So the fact that that was getting a lot of views is really good for knowing that people know what's going on with CRTPO. And so some of the things that we continued from the previous fiscal year but continued to strengthen was our quarterly communications team meeting with our member jurisdictions. And in this meeting, we gather communications professionals from all of the different jurisdictions in our planning area, and we rotate on different educational topics and share on best common practices. So for example, Riley George from Pineville had a great presentation for the rest of us on utilizing AI in local government and in engagement and how that was able to aid their processes. We did staff tours with our jurisdictions. In the picture there, you see Judy and I visiting the town of Davidson at their town hall, which is actually the same building as my middle school. So it was a bit of a homecoming for me. There we go. And then we did a lot of nonprofit outreach, not with just nonprofits in individual jurisdictions, but also those with a regional scope. So engaging with folks like Dream Key Partners and United Way, in order to make it so that we're able to get with those organizations that had boots on the ground in the jurisdictions that we're serving. And as well as continuing our CRTPO 101 presentations. You see Bob there giving a presentation to Fairview back in November, as well as beefing up our Spanish language outreach, which is a part of implementing our LEP or our Limited English Proficiency Plan, which is a part of our Title VI plan, which is a part of our strategic plan update, which will be finalized in November. And so some of our other plans and project initiatives from the past FY was our 2026 to 2035 TIP development, the public comment period for which just wrapped up this past Friday. And because the TIP is a continuous process, the development for the 2028 to 2037 TIP has already begun. We also had the Beyond 77 Coalition kickoff earlier this calendar year. You see Kendall leading that in the picture on the right. And we had a meeting for that right before this meeting today. So that continues the work that began the previous fiscal year with the Beyond 77 study. And I've talked a lot on this pedestal about the 2055 MTP Phase 2 public engagement. So that, of course, was a huge part of our engagement for this past fiscal year. And once again, our engagement doesn't just include members of the general public like it did with that Phase 2 MTP engagement, but also with our member jurisdictions, you all, the elected officials, as well as our transportation professionals, including in events like the Joint MPO Roundtable with Gas and Cleveland Lincoln MPO, Congestion Management Education Series, in which we had a three-panel series in which we educated board members on the causes, impacts, assessment tools, mitigation strategies, and funding for congestion management. The relaunch of the Encampo Transit Subcommittee in collaboration with NCAMPO and CAMPO from our partners in the capital area in the Triangle. Our training on the discretionary grant program and locally administrated projects, as well as our participation in various conferences, both in the state and beyond. And you see Jarrell over in this picture on the right leading a presentation on the Central Liner Regional TDM plan. And so what's next, or what's current? And so like I said, the 2026-2035 TIP public comment period recently closed. And so we'll be gathering the results of that public comment period and sharing with you all very soon. The adoption of the 2055 MTP, which we anticipate early next year. as well as the update to the strategic plan, which I previously mentioned this upcoming November. We also have a rebranding, which you might have noticed from the cupcakes that you received earlier, but also from our FY 2025 annual report. So you'll see our new logo on the front of the report, if I could direct you all to that. You may also open up to the first spread and see that we have been in existence for 60 years, which we wanted to mark with this new logo and with this rebranding. It's been 10 years since we had a rebranding, and even though we are a 60-year organization, we shouldn't look like we've been around for 60 years. So in order to make our look modern and fresh, as well as to mark the occasion and to align with our strategic plan update, we created this new logo all for free with the Charlotte Communications and Marketing team here at the City of Charlotte, in which we are administratively located. And so you can see the timeline of CRTPO for the past 60 years, including some of our older logos back when we were MUMPO. And then the current logo you've all seen every board meeting leading up to the current logo that we have today. And so you'll notice that the new logo is present in this report, and you'll start to see it in all of our materials slowly but surely. So we're very much looking forward to that. Any questions on any of the engagement we've done this past fiscal year or what we're up to currently?
Great job. I know that's been one of the challenges that we've had for so many years, probably 59 of them, of communicating and getting people to respond to the information. So you have just done an amazing job, you and your team. So questions, comments for Merritt? Well done. We appreciate
I'm just pleased you didn't ask for our input on the logo. That would have been awful. Great job. Never gotten that done.
Exactly. Great. Okay. Rounding third base here. Neil, what's on the upcoming?
The October 15th CRTPO board agenda is anticipated to include action to adopt the 2026 through 2035 Transportation Improvement Program, action to approve the non-highway funding projections by Horizon Year for the 2055 MTP, which you heard about tonight, and then the CTP amendment for the city of Monroe, the US 74 and Rocky River Road grade separation, as well as this will be on consent to open a public comment period on the Verhoff Drive CTP amendment in Huntersville. We'll have 2 information reports on the strategic plan update and the Beyond 77 Coalition update. And that's what we have so far.
So our division engineers for 10 and 12 are at a conference this week. So we're changing our, sorry about that. Our division 10 and 12 representatives are at a conference this week with changing the dates. I think that had a conflict with them. We're going to move on to the board member comments. I just got a couple of things I wanted to share with everybody on some results from the transportation summit. So if you want to. All right. So at the, Mr. Lathrop mentioned the Transportation Summit earlier this month. That I know myself, I was there. Councilmember Driggs was there on a panel, and the day before the and Commissioner Altman, yep, you were there too. Yes, good. The day prior to the summit starting, they had a I-77 South Express Lanes Industry Forum, and as you can see from the picture, it was a packed house, well over 260 people there. As you can see, 100 firms, small businesses representing a lot of P3 developers. And, you know, they talked about the funding and innovation for our growing population. So wanted to share that with you just as one of our key target goals in the RFQ for I-77 South is robust interest and hopefully some, you know, proposals that will come back with that. So when you have 200 and some people show up, we're going to have some great deal of interest on that. I think were you there for the industry?
Able to attend that, but I just wanted to highlight the fact one of our big concerns from I-77 North was the limited interest and the fact that 3 of 4 potentially interested parties dropped out. So we're going to have a competitive process here, and it could well involve large amounts of money up front, which is an interesting thing. And I'm curious to know what will happen if that comes true, but that's for a later conversation. Much better situation than we had last time.
Exactly, exactly. Anything you want to add to that? Okay, all right. And the next slide. And then just a couple of highlights from the actual summits. Again, it was held in Raleigh earlier this month. As Tony said, about 1,100 people attended. It really is a great industry opportunity to talk with everybody from DOT to the engineers to P3, everybody all around. So it was a great summit, took away a lot of good information, and look forward to it next year. But I think our big excitement was the number of people that came to the industry day, the day prior to that. So any other board comments that anybody wants to share for the good of the group? If not, then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
A second? Second, all those in favor say aye. All right, and motion carries. We'll see you all next month.